I just recently got top ace in the closed beta of Battle Aces, and I'm super stoked about it. I just wanted to go over my thoughts on some of the units and some of the strategies I found in the game grinding all the way to top ace, and how I'm feeling about the game currently. First, this is the team that I used to get into top ace. This was my winning match to get me over the threshold, right over 7,000. It's not the only team I used, but I did switch it up overall, but I mainly used Scorpions throughout my entire time playing to top ace. When I was climbing, the reason why I had to switch so much is because I feel like a lot of the ladder realized a lot of teams were going more swarmy, because Wasps is such a strong unit. I'm going to go ahead and talk about Wasps in a little bit, but let me go ahead and just finish going over the team. So once in a while, I'll probably use Gunbot, or I would actually be using Recall. Recall was one of my favorite units to use besides using Scorpion, just because it is a very defensive unit. It's a very strong unit, and it does counter a lot of the teams that people are building on the ladder currently. But overall, I did find my most comfort with Scorpion just because of how fast it is on the map compared to the other base units. It's faster than Crabs, so you do have that advantage of just being a straight harassment type of unit. A lot of top level players are pairing Hornets with Crabs, and that's why I had the idea to pair them with Scorpions. And I feel like it works really well, especially if they do flex into air. For Starforge, this constantly keeps changing. I just have to build specifically what I see that's most common, because there's some matches where it just feels like people are building directly against the units I have, and you just constantly have to stay flexible. Stinger was very strong, and I realized worked really well with Scorpions, because it was really hard to find an answer for King Crabs, especially when I wanted to go Starforge for airship, because a lot of people were going Butterfly Rush, and that was very common all the way up to from Diamond to top ace for some reason. Valkyrie is actually very strong. It's one of the best units, especially if they only have T1 anti-air like Hornet, because Valkyrie, if you get enough of them, you can pretty much take out a whole swarm of Hornets and then make them burn any economy that they did have when they did send out Hornets. For Foundry, this has pretty much been the staple. I think Shocker is one of the best units in the game, and a lot of people should use them. Crusader I really don't like, because it's a very slow unit, and a lot of people do enjoy this unit to counter King Crabs, but I found out if you do just go Starforge, and if they built mainly King Crabs, you can overwhelm them with Starforge, and then they'll start building anti-air, and then that's when you can start either going Valkyrie all the way, Stinger, or you can flex back into your Foundry. Valkyrie does counter Mortars and Recall, from my opinion. Recall Hunters are very weak units. In the same case of Hornets, if you make enough Valkyries, you can overwhelm the Hunters, especially if they don't have airship, or if they have to build airship, just because they would have to lower their defensive units, which would be their recall units, as well as the mortars that they won't be able to build anymore. There is some strategies that I absolutely despise that should be checked on. The main one I really want to talk about is specifically Wasp 1 base. It's a very bad feeling whenever you do lose to a Wasp 1 base. And the thing is, it could happen at any moment, especially if you're trying out a new comp, or if in the fact that you just mess up once. So there's a lot of things that you have to think about. I think a lot of top players were very cautious on what way to play whenever they Foundry, or sorry, whether or not they do a second base versus going tech, just because if there's a Wasp in the game, there's a good chance that you can get one base to lose. So I think Wasp's purpose is to surround a team and then eat the units as you overwhelm the player, but not to just one base and backdoor the game. I feel like that entire strategy should be looked at and adjusted. I mean, a lot of top players know how to work against it, but I mean, I'm talking about people currently as the beta stands. I don't know how many beta keys were given, but anyone that's, top 500 right now can sort of deal with this. Once in a while, you may get caught off guard and just lose to it. And that's what I've kind of been seeing. I think Crabs are really good. I feel like they're very slow. I've seen a lot of people play Crabs, but they get overwhelmed by faster mobility units like Gunbots, Blink Hunters. I see them lose the recall all the time. I beat Crabs all the time with Scorpion. So it's really hard to see. I at least can't make Crabs work as well as some of the other top players. A lot of people are pairing this with like Wasp as a late unit, just because they are very bulky and do a lot of melee damage. Hunter, very good unit. There's no thing about it. It's a great anti-air unit. Recall is a great unit. I found myself pretty much playing a lot of turtle setups with this. One thing I did run into when I was playing Recall was a lot of Recall players would just save a ton of resources just to spam a strong like tier Starforge. Like they would just rush into butterflies and then just send to base, and the games would only last about 2 minutes. And I feel like that strategy should be looked at. I mean, there's obvious ways to prepare for this, especially if someone is teching. You can build anti-air or prepare your own anti-air for it, especially against Recall, which is a very defensive. They're going to have so many units and so many butterflies, it's going to be very hard to overwhelm it unless you're like playing a specific harass team comp that can stop it. But you're also spending units, they're spending units. But for, you know, Recall, they can play as defenses as they want and still have a lot of units unless you're like Wasp. Recall is actually the counter to Wasp, but that's why I stopped using Wasp, is because I was just going against Recall all the time. Let me go ahead and start talking about the better units as well. Ballista is actually really good. I feel like it's a very balanced unit. I've used Ballista a lot, and you could still use Ballista all the way up to top ace. There's still people in top ace that use Ballista. King Crabs, I feel like there's no explanation for them. They are one of the best ground units in the game right now, especially since people get access to it immediately. It's one of the easiest units to use, one of the best units to flex into as well. I see people just going straight Foundry just so they can get their King Crabs as soon as possible. Crusader, which is the true counter to the King Crab, that's what a lot of people say. It's a very good unit. I think it is a good unit. I'm just bad at using it. With Shocker, it hits multiple units. So if you get 4 or 5 Shockers and you're going against Swamps or Scorpions, this is eating. If you're going against Crabs with Hornets, the Crab Hornet team can't approach your Swarm anymore just because there's Shockers waiting to blow them up. The thing is, Crusader is the single target unit, so if they have a lot of big bulky units, a lot of people build this for mortars too, but I feel like it's a big risk because a lot of people I've seen have been making mortar pods where they like move 4 mortars into one spot now. You can't just send Crusaders to each mortar anymore. You have to figure out how to blow up the entire pod, and that's one of the most annoying things. Bomber, I've messed around with this unit. I feel like it's a very fun unit to use, but it's very inconsistent. It's very hard to make it work on every team just because there's a lot of people who have very strong units on their team that can counter this. If you're ahead and you are a good player that can get ahead very fast, this is going to be your best friend. This is going to be one of the best units for you just because it can just delete lines for you if you need it. And then you can also backdoor with this unit, which is extremely popular. I'd be running to the back of base with 5-6 of these units, and you can delete entire worker lines with it. And it's pretty insane. So it's really scary to go against this unit once in a while. But I don't see a problem going against it. I think it's fairly fair. Shocker, I think this unit's strong as heck. I think it's a very slept on unit just because how much AoE it does do. And I was kiting with this unit. So some of my strategy is like get Scorpions in, and then once they try to build overwhelm me, I'll probably have like 8 Shockers, and then I'll just, you know, micro kite with Shocker, and then I'll be deleting whole entire teams with it, and it's so fun. Same thing with Recall Shocker. This is kind of similar with this Shocker. I never used Recall Shocker just because I really don't play a full team of Recall, but I think it is a good unit. I go against it once in a while, but it's so slow. You can catch this unit off guard so often. You can catch it with Scorpions, you can catch it with Crabs. Crabs hit this all the time, so I feel like a lot of people aren't building this unit anymore. But it is a fun unit. I don't think it's the greatest though. Mortars, I think this is a very toxic build, but I think it is I think it's fair in a sense, but it's so common. I feel like it does need to be looked at just because a lot of people in top team high elo are still building it. People at low elo are building it. The fact that is there's a lot of units that can't counter this unit, or a lot of people who don't know how to play against mortars. My 2 suggestions is finding any way you can flex into your air to delete your mortars. It's the safest way, just because if you try to prepare ground for mortars, you're going to be taking a lot more damage than you would if you just have some air support or out expand on mortars. if you know your opponent is building mainly mortars, let's say they have already 10 mortars or they have like 8, which is more realistic, you could definitely just start expanding. Then he would have to either build more into an offensive team that he has to move, because mortars are very mobile. So it's really hard to move when you do expand on a mortar team. Most common team I saved when mortars was Recall Mortar, which makes sense. It's the best defensive combo, I think, in the game. And that's what a lot of people are preparing for, is huge defensive teams. This eats Scorpions, dude. So that's why with like a Scorpion player, this is your main enemy, just because if you run into this, this will be eating most of your line. I really wish I can go to Foundry first, but if you're playing Scorpions and they have mortars, you're going to kind of get stuck. Swift Shockers. I think this is a really good unit. Only works with specific teams. I don't think you can just throw this on any team. It's a very specific in a way where it's like, if you don't have something to defend these, then it's not good. But if you have a strong front line and you have a ton of these, it's a nightmare. It's a very interesting unit to use. It's hard to find. I used it a ton, so it's a very good unit. But I just didn't feel it in my sense of accomplishment when I was playing. You can catch this unit off guard. Shocker beats Swift Shockers, just because if they stop on your Shocker, you're gonna kill. I think it's like 3 Swift Shockers, or I might be wrong. I might be completely wrong. I just haven't gone against Swift Shockers as often anymore, just because it's not as common as it used to be. Heavy Hunter, HH. This is a great unit. I barely get a chance to use it because I don't own it, and I only had it on rotation once, and it was a lot of fun when I had it. It helps out a lot, especially if you have someone that's rushing butterflies or falcons or has Valkyries. Heavy Hunters are a great unit to definitely counter those. Destroyers. Okay, this is such a unique unit. I feel like you have to build a specific strong frontline game. So I see a lot of people run Gunbot Crusader with Destroyer so they can blow up bases. Just it's so fun to watch. Sometimes fun to play, but like you're mainly defending this unit. You're not using this unit. It's always being defended, and then it does eat line. So like if you do go against this and this is being well defended, it's gonna eat your team, and then it's just gonna destroy your base. I see people just win with this unit. I haven't used it much myself, so I haven't had a strong opinion on it, and I've always beaten people who try to use this unit just because they don't know how to use it. I know a lot of top players know how to use it well. Raiders, I think this unit did get nerfed, and I see no one use it. I have only gotten hit by one guy that ran Raiders. It was a good player, and he ran me once, so I have no real opinion against it. I knew he sent 3 and then it ate up base, so I think it is a good unit. It's just hard to find reliance on it, just because it is an easy unit to take out if you're prepared for it. Turret, I think you should ignore. I think it's a terrible versatile unit. This is one of the worst base units. If they're trying to make a base unit, mortar, always just go mortar. Don't even think about this. This is a strong unit, especially if it's like, if you know they're gonna go flex into air. But everyone at lower elos using it, but I don't see anyone at higher elo using it. It's like, because you could go so many other things that would be better than this, especially if you're trying to defend base 2 or 3. You don't need this. You could just go mortar, or if you're like having trouble with air, you can find a different anti-air like Heavy Hunter. All right, let's talk about the Advanced Foundry. This is interesting. I think all these units are good, like, actually, but it's so hard to find a good time to use them on what team you're using. So let me make that make sense, you know. Heavy Ballista, a great unit. I think this is obviously the better version of the Ballista. This is so hard to go against if you don't have Starforge open, just because if you have ground units, this is eating, and it's really hard to counter it without any air support. I've had no games where I was able to overwhelm this with ground unless I had snipers, and that's one thing that I would have to do. It was just like, I have to build snipers to counter Heavy Ballista, so I wouldn't have a chance to use Heavy Ballista, you know. Or it would just be Heavy Ballista Dittos, and it was annoying. So, I mean, it's overall, it's a very strong unit. There is ways to get around it, but I mainly use air to just beat this unit. Predator, great unit. I think I didn't get to use it enough. I really want to buy this unit. This is probably going to be one of the next units I buy before the beta ends, just because it is such a strong unit. It can eat up entire Falcon teams. If you have the Valkyrie strategy that I was talking about earlier, you can definitely use this just to eat up all your Valkyries, and it's one of the best counters, especially if you are on ground. I recommend anyone who likes using ground units to bring this 100%, just because if people do tech into their Starforge, they're gonna be very scared if you have Predators already chosen. So snipers, awesome unit. They're very slow. I get why, but they are very slow, so it's hard to position them. Or I mean, it's not that hard to position them. Reliably defend the front line with them, just because if you're using these to take out like heavy ballistas, they're already eating the front line. So it's like hard to get these into the right area in the right amount of time to take out the ballistas for the front line. Because if they step forward, they're dead. If they step too far back, they're gonna miss the ballistas, and the ballistas are already gonna eat up the front line, and it's a whole mess. So that's why I go air. Advanced Blink, I did not get to use this unit at all. I think it's a great unit. I like playing Blink. I played a lot of Blink, especially in Diamond, just because I wanted to see if I could make it work, and sometimes I made it work. Mainly just because I like harassing, and that's a lot of what you will have to do, especially if people are playing defensive against like Recall. So I'm sad that I didn't get to use it. Maybe in the future. Oh, it's actually on rotation, so I might be able to use it soon. I might be able to use it today. Saltbot, I did get to use a Saltbot, but I did not find good use from it. I think this unit's not that good. I think it is good, but I'm just bad at bots. How about that? I'll just say that. I want to see someone just use a Saltbot and then make this work. Maybe with like a Saltbot Stinger or like, but then you would have to be on tier 3 Foundry, so what would you need to pair it with? I don't see. That's like the things I gotta think about when I think about Assault Bot. Just because it's really hard to defend this unit. Just because it is a very weak unit. I know it's a very strong unit. It's the better version of Gunbot. But it's very hard to use, I think. Behemoth, I think this unit slept on. This is just like better, I don't know, like King Crab, I guess. I use this unit whenever people just like go swarming and build king crabs. People get overwhelmed a lot, but I rarely see myself going tier 3 Foundry with my team. Only in specific scenarios if it dictates it, depending on my team's build or my opponent's building, obviously. I'm always got to build what your opponent's building, just because it's gonna be hard to figure out good counters for it. Let's talk about the Starforge. I love all the Starforge units. Butterfly, straight great unit, very strong. I feel like this is one of the hardest units to play against if you're playing against a good player who knows how to use butterflies. Very lethal, very hard to counter. That's why you just have to have good anti-air. I usually recommend Hornets, Blink Hunters, or just Airship. That would be the only way I would ever suggest playing against butterflies. You can play with like missile bots and stuff like that, but it gets hard because they move pretty fast. Dragonfly, I think it's a great version of the butterfly. Just a tankier, slower version, I believe. A little bit less damage. It's actually faster. It's a faster butterfly with less damage that's tanky. So I was building dragonflies for a lot of my comps. You can see some of my other videos. I built dragonflies just to win games because dragonfly is a very hard unit to defend against, especially if you don't have good anti-air. And it's a versatile unit, so you can get up and down. This does get eaten up by like hornets, so be careful building dragonfly. Just because it doesn't do enough damage to overwhelm T1 anti-air, but it's a great worker killer. It's great to counter ground. It's one of my favorite units to use for sure. Falcons, I did use Falcons for a little bit, but I think it's too slow. I think it's a really good unit, but I rarely see myself enjoying using this unit, just because I'd much rather use a dragonfly or a butterfly on my team. Airship is probably one of the best anti-air units in the game. I think this unit is super solid. It's especially if you go Starforge and they go Starforge, this is just a great unit to go straight for. I see a lot of people just build Airship, so they would go Airship and then 2 advanced Starforges. Like then they would go Kraken if they wanted to, Lotus or Valkyrie, or even this little guy Artillery. And that's what some of the strategies I saw. It was pretty insane how strong Starforge is altogether, just because a lot of these units make or break. They're very weak units in my opinion, in like health wise, because they can be taken out so easily. But if they're defended well, or if they are prepared, this will win games the fastest most of the time, in my opinion. I think Foundry is in the same boat. but I've had a lot more wins with this team whenever I focus setting up my Starforge. Advanced Recall, a really good unit. I haven't used it. Most of the upgraded units I haven't used, except for Assault Bot. I really don't see anyone use this unit as well, so I have no opinion against it. Since I don't see anyone use it, I don't think it's going to probably be that good, but it's worth experimenting and checking out. Maybe a little bit buff here and there, because like his health is so low. That's probably why a lot of people don't go this unit, just because it's a very low health unit, especially if someone has strong ground. There's no reason to build this. That's probably what I see. Mammoth, I love this unit. It's a great unit to flex into, especially for your Starforge if you need ground support, just because then you can focus getting Butterfly, Mammoth, and then your T1 like Scorpion, or you could go like Stinger, Mammoth, and then you have Starforge ground, which is very interesting because you won't have any air support. But if they built anti-air or an anti-air team, which isn't common, I guess, but you can just eat it up. I would recommend always try and get a flying unit into your Starforge, but you can go double ground if you want, just because of Stinger. Stinger is a great unit too. I'm on and off with Stinger just because sometimes I get countered. I think a lot of people were getting countered on Stinger, so I wasn't using Stinger a lot. And then once in a while, I just put Stinger back in, and then I start winning games. And then I get countered again, and I take it off. So that's how I feel about that unit. It's a very strong unit, and I think a lot of people are gonna noob trick it because it's a good unit if you start learning on it. If you want to learn how to micro and you want to be really good at like hiding, this is a great unit to pair with Wasp. You can just click. I pair it with Scorpions, so then I have a melee front line that's a little bit stronger than Wasp. I'm not losing as much units like Wasp, because if you're going against like Recall or Blink, Wasps are getting picked off each 25, right? So they're much weaker than Scorpions. Scorpions can survive in a 1v1 against Recall, especially with Stingers, and that's why I use it. Heavy turret, it's also ass. I think all base turrets are bad. Just build mortars and you're good. Those are your best option. Every single time I go against a turret, I win. I don't know. Maybe I'm just not playing against a good turret player, but I haven't played anybody who's played this and beat me with it. So I would advise against it highly. All these units are probably the best units in the game, I think. Bulwark, very, very basic unit, very good unit. I've lost a few games against Bulwark. I feel like it's one of the best tier 3 units in the game. Just because it's so tanky and it can hit up and down. Opponent gets 5 of these, and if you're not prepared, it's over. I mean, that's every given scenario, but even if you try to prepare for this, if there's a good chance that they can overwhelm you and beat you with this unit. Cat Bus, very strong unit. I hate using it. I've lost to 1 Cat Bus, but I've seen a lot of people use this unit. I just haven't had a good success with it. Lotus, this is a very interesting unit. I want to use it more often, but it's a very weak unit. I can't find a lot of use for it until I need to overwhelm something, but this gets eaten up by T1 anti-air, which is very sad. I think this unit needs to be adjusted a little bit, maybe a little bit more damage. It's very fast, it's very hard to catch, but if it was like, especially as an advanced unit, it needs probably a little bit more damage, especially with like Valkyrie. I'll talk about Kraken in a second. Valkyrie, who has 5-star damage with 4 health, it doesn't make sense that Valkyrie is 75 more and more reliable than Lotus, because if you build 3 Lotus, you could build 1 Valkyrie, but you would probably get eaten up fairly fast. Artillery, I rarely use this unit. It's a fun unit. I think it's a cute unit. It's probably one of my best, or one of my favorite looking units in the game. But I see some people use it, but I feel like it just dies really fast because it's so slow. It's like playing mortars. Like, you're moving these super slow artillery units, but they do a lot of damage. I love moving them, and when I get them in, it's a lot of fun using them. And then Advanced Bot. I've had my opinion on the upgraded units. I think these need to just be checked again, especially Advanced Bot. But I feel like you're going this if you're in the lead and you just want a stronger push unit, push potential, and that's when you would switch off your base T1 to go into Advanced Bot. But I rarely see teams go into that when they could just flex into something better or win the game sooner with different units. Now, finally, the Kraken. I've never used it. I've only seen it once in a 2v2 battle that I was rewatching on a replay on YouTube. I don't think it's practical to bring into ones. You could potentially build Kraken in ones, but only if you are literally obliterating your opponent. And it's sort of like a end all. It's like, why are we messing around anymore type of situation where you just send the Kraken, and it's pretty much a game you've already won. So, but I think it's a really cool unit. I think it's very creative to the lore of the game. I think it looks very cool. I really wish I could see it in ones more. Actually, no, don't bring it into ones at all. I think it'll ruin the meta very quickly if it was more available to players.
Other than that, I like twos. I'm very bad at twos. I haven't figured out how to resource correctly with 2 players, at least at a higher level. Ones is one of the funnest I've had. I'm gonna be extremely honest. I am new to RTS. I've played a ton of RTS games in the past, but I've never played any competitive RTS. So this is the first experience to at least the competitive part of RTS. I've tried StarCraft 2, but I felt like I was a little too late to the scene to even get into it. So I spent a lot of time playing League of Legends, and that's what I've sort of translated into this, is what I know about League of Legends, just learning the units, and then just being able to, learn micro, learn the game a little bit, and manage. I've played a lot of other ones in the past, like I played Civ, I played Northgard, I played Total Warhammer, I played StarCraft 2, but I mean, these were games that I've only played for a few hours, and I mean, only a couple times. But I've always had a great interest in them, and especially the unit battles, and this is what I've really seen in this game, and that's what I'm very excited for.
Now, the only things I wanted to cover, or my remaining suggestions before I sign off, are just a couple items to help improve the game over its longevity or when the full release does come out. My number one suggestion is just making more versatile units, or not versatile meaning that they can hit up and down, but more units to specifically combat each other, like a better unit to combat mortars. A lot of people suggest using Crusaders against mortars, but the way strategy is going, most people are building mortars and Crusaders, so people who want to try other units will have to find a different counter for these units, especially mainly just ground counters, just because Starforge has some of the best air tech in the game that can take over these mortars and Crusaders. So that's the only reason why I feel myself in Starforge more often, just because I'd rather not deal with fighting mortars with mortars, or Crusaders with Crusaders, or heavy ballista with heavy ballista, just because it is very difficult, and most of the time, especially if you have a swarm in your team like Scorpions and Wasp, you are getting eaten up by ground tech really well. So just making more units over time, I imagine that's one of their main goals, is to add more units to the game, really help with the competitive energy and finding new strategies to implement into the game, is what I really want to see coming out of this. Not people maining specific strategies and then having to figure out how to combat that specific strategy. I mean, overall, you will have to learn how to combat specific strategies, but not being familiar with 5, and then you only are able to beat 3 and the other 2 will beat you consistently, if that makes sense. It will really allow creativity to flow through the game if there was more units, just so people can play a bunch of different types. But there is an issue with power creep, and as well as just finding good units to implement to the game, especially with minion-based units, without breaking the game entirely. My second suggestion is map variation. I believe the map should be a little bit bigger, or at least have more integral sections in the middle of the map, something worth fighting over, or even something where both teams, I think it would makes more sense if the battles were 4-base and both teams have to fight for the center 4-base slot, but that makes sense if it was a slower game. But adding more variation may make the game feel less boring, because we are only playing on one map. I imagine they're going to have many maps in rotation, but I want to have more integral points to fight over, better areas to hold, better areas to fight, just because currently the center of the map isn't as integral as it should be. I mean, that's where you can base your unit and get closest to the enemy team, so a lot of teams do fight around there, but a lot of defensive teams, regardless, like to sit on their 3rd base or stay in 2nd base and then just teleport around on recall.
So it's really interesting to see. There isn't a lot of fighting over middle ground, which is something I want to see more of. I literally see people smashing through and just mainly fighting around an integral point like a base or not even walls, because the walls in the game aren't really that good. They really literally just have they're just literally there for an obstacle. The Fog of War is really good. I think it is fairly easy to hide units, but I feel like people should take advantage of hiding their units more since that option is available to them. High ground would be really cool, but I don't know how that would be implemented since none of the units have high ground capabilities. Air tech's really good. The only benefit for air is hiding outside the map, which is really good, but there isn't a lot of points where you need to hide a bunch of units in the outside of the map, unless you're surprising for like a backdoor or you're just gonna win. I don't know. That's something that I had an opinion on. I want a little bit more variation with the maps. I think they should implement, especially in ranked, specific map sections. Like for this season, this is the map that we're playing on, or these are the 3 maps we're rotating from. Or you go to this map first, this map next, and this map third, or something like that. Especially in ranked, since these games go so fast, I think ranked should be probably a best of 3, and then rotate between maps. Give a chance between matches to switch units, which would be a lot of fun, especially since I see best of 9 games online, and people are switching their units all the time. Overall, I think the game is extremely addicting, and I think it's going to be extremely successful when it does come to launch. Another suggestion is just allowing as many people to join as possible. It is insane, the experience that I got from this. It's one of the funnest games I've played in a little while, especially in RTS. Getting new players is integral. I feel like a lot of mainstream RTS players are sort of setting up a barrier just because they've been around for a little while. They know a lot about RTS and think this game should be made a specific way. And I feel like that's really scaring a lot of newer players. So I really suggest people who are hardcore RTS or experienced RTS players to introduce people to this game, especially if you have friends that don't play RTS and want to play, or don't want to learn a bunch of RTS mech, because this is one of the easiest games to get into and learn, just because there isn't a lot of management besides unit management and micro. Macro is something you don't really have to think about, but it is a smaller portion of the game when you're trying to expand, just because it is integral. Is this a good time to expand? Is this a bad time to expand? So those things are things worth thinking about, but I don't have to think about what type of base I need to build a specific type of unit. Besides that, the beta is going to be closing soon. I think I'm going to be playing more Battle Aces. I'm going to try to get a little bit higher to play some better players. I really want to start playing some top 100s. I've played a couple of really good players, but I haven't really gotten super close to breakthrough on them. They've been in tug of wars with me, and then I pretty much mess up in one section or expand at the wrong time, and these experienced players just blow me out. So other than that, I hope everyone enjoys the video. I hope you guys enjoy Battle Aces. If the devs are looking at this, I love the game. It makes me very frustrated sometimes, especially when I lose, but I think it's a great opportunity to bring new people into the RTS space. So keep it up. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.